I asked for it. I really, really did. I thought that the speech by the Vice President of the United States, the nominee for the Democratic Party for the presidency of the United States of America, had to show up. Had to show up, had to step up, had to make sure that she separated her speech from that disastrous speech that Trump gave a few weeks ago in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the Republican National Convention. Well, guess what? Kamala Harris showed up last night. She showed up. Oh, did she show up? She had a whole lot to say. And guess what? So do I. Not just about her, but also on college football. And then some. You never know what the hell is on my mind. But you're about to find out. The Stephen A. Smith Show in the house coming at you. Holla at your boy. Let's go.
On behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do at the very least 3 days a week over the digital airwaves of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. I want to thank y'all again because the followers, the subscribers continue to grow. I have now eclipsed 765,000 subscribers. And, of course, I've eclipsed over 2.5 million downloads on iHeartRadio. So those 65,000 subscribers on YouTube, can't thank y'all enough. I know I'm not Cristiano Ronaldo. I get that, doing 1 million in a day. But, damn it, I ain't no elite soccer player either. So what do you expect, all right? For me, for my little humble self, my little old me, to have 765,000 subscribers over the last 16 months, I just can't thank y'all enough for the love and support. Keep it coming, and I'm going to keep on coming, okay? And remember, as always, to continue to like and follow the show, just click the right-hand bell in the corner there, and you, too, will be the latest member of the Stephen A. Smith Show family. And while you're busy doing that, don't forget to get a copy of my New York Times best-selling book, Straight Shooter, a memoir of second chances and first takes, now in paperback. Okay, just go to straightshooterbook.com to get yourself a copy. Once again, that's straightshooterbook.com. And by the way, you don't have to wait until Christmas to do it. It's a gift that keeps on giving all year round. So feel free to go and get it and enjoy it. I got a lot to get into. I'm not going to negate getting into sports because college football season begins tomorrow afternoon when the Florida State Seminoles go up against Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. So I'm looking forward to talking to the one and only Mr. Paul Feinbaum, not just about that game, but about the college football landscape and all the things it entails, from the elite teams in college football to the portal itself, the transfer portal, to the effect it's had on college football, to some of the big-name coaches, from a Nick Saban who is gone, to a Kalen DeBoer, to a Kirby Smart, to an even Dabo Swinney, to a Ryan Day, to the new coach of Michigan, Sharon Moore, and others. There's a whole bunch of stuff to get into. And Paul Feinbaum, there's nobody better to get into it with than the mouth of the South himself, who's blessing us with his presence in just a few minutes. But that comes after what I'm about to talk about here, and that is the Vice President of the United States, the official Democratic nominee for the presidency of the United States of America. Her name is Kamala Harris. Before I get into any of that, however, I have to correct a lie that has been told. Now, you've got some conservatives out there, and I'm not here to speak against conservatives. I'm a registered independent. There are things that I side with when it comes to the liberals. There are things that I side with when it comes to conservatives. I'm not apologizing for that to anybody. My buddy, one of my buddies is Sean Hannity. I ain't apologizing for that. I know and respect Mark Levin for years. I ain't apologizing for that to a damn soul. But I also don't agree with a lot of their politics, although I concede that there are some things they say that I think make very, very valid points, okay? But there are other conservatives out there who are full of it, who sit up there and try to misrepresent my positions because, oh, my goodness, they think that I'm a voice, and as a result of being a voice, you get to misrepresent me. Now, I want y'all to see and put up there on the full screen who these people are that put out this tweet here, okay? Because I want people to see that, okay? This is from, I don't know who the hell these people are or whatever, but it's at Defiantly Free. Insurrection Barbie is what they call it. And I had no problem with the clip of mine that they posted because they took a post from this show, the Stephen A. Smith show, and they showed it all 11 minutes or so of it, okay? And every word that was in there, I said. And I'm not backing up from it. But what I didn't say was what their caption showed. And their caption showed Stephen A. Smith, Kamala Harris, is not qualified to run. I never said that. Those words didn't come out of my mouth. They're full of it. Now, I understand captions are used as a tool to draw in an audience. I get that part. But damn, do you have to lie? Do you have to fabricate? You didn't even embellish. I didn't say that. I wouldn't speak about the vice president of the United States in that fashion. You got people out there that have been calling Trump racist and all that stuff. I don't talk about the former president like that. I talk about how he acts. I talk about the things that he says. I allude to him not being good for this country because I don't think he has the discipline or the maturity to do what needs to be done. I say stuff like that, but I don't call him out his name, and I certainly don't misrepresent what he says and what he does. I don't do that. And I wouldn't do that to the vice president of the United States, who, by the way, is a sister, a fellow HBCU grad, and somebody I have every intention of voting for. The nerve of y'all to lie on me like that. I'm talking about, who is this here? Insurrection Barbie. That's what I'm talking about. That's a damn lie. Now, if you watch the clip for 11 minutes, you'll see me pointing to Kamala Harris and saying, yo, you got to show up. Rallies, that's not a press conference where you're taking questions. That's not a one-on-one sit-down interview where you're taking questions. That's not like sitting down with Meet the Press or This Week or Face the Nation or State of the Union or one of these shows on Fox News, MSNBC, or CNN or ABC, NBC, CBS. A rally is not that. At some point in time, although the strategy has worked thus far, what I was imploring our vice president to do, leading in to her speech last night in Chicago at the Democratic National Convention, officially accepting the nomination of the people to be the next president of the United States from the Democratic Party. What I said is, this honeymoon has got to come to an end. At some point in time, you got to stand up and you got to let the world know you ain't playing around. This is this man you going up against. You going up against a man convicted on 34 felony counts. You're going up against a man who lost a civil suit for over $454 million. You're going up against a man that's been impeached twice. You're going up against a man with a bevy of legal issues, and you got to stand up and you can't be running. I don't give a damn what wave you riding. And I also pointed out the process that she didn't have to go through. Because with President Biden in office and him being the incumbent and the wheels clearly haven't been greased for him to walk into Chicago as the Democratic nominee without any competition because there was no primary, knowing that that was the backdrop before he revealed himself on June 27th to having lost a significant pep in his step, as a result, forcing Democratic donors and supporters to threaten to jump ship unless he stepped away from the race so somebody younger, more vibrant, more lucid, dare I say, et cetera, can jump into the fray. I said, knowing that that was your backdrop, and knowing that you didn't have a primary to deal with, and knowing that you didn't have any competition standing in your face, and the path had been cleared for you to compete with one man and one man only, and that was Donald Trump. I said, you can't be You can't be ducking that smoke. You got to go for it. And you should be able to handle it. I said it and I meant it. And nobody was stuttering. And so with that as the backdrop, understanding that, that's all I was saying. Nobody said that she was unqualified, like they're trying to quote me as saying. I'm making sure that Stephen A. Smith, Kamala is not qualified to run. I never, ever said that. Ever. And to use my name to put forth that drivel, that flat-out lie, is BS. See, this is the kind of stuff that hurts politicians and their supporters and surrogates. If you got the truth and your message is strong enough, what the hell you got to lie for? That's what they try to do. And I'm saying that ain't right. Now that I got that out the way, let me get started with the Democratic National Convention that wrapped up last night. Like I told you, in Chicago, Illinois. The convention was an event that was star-studded from start to finish with luminaries from all walks of life. The Democratic Party showcased their best and brightest on the night where Kamala Harris officially accepted the Democratic nomination for the President of the United States of America. She's the first woman of color to ever accept a major party nomination in this country. Okay? Even though, woman of color, of course. I was getting ready to say woman, but Hillary Rodham Clinton did do it in 2016, but I digress. She's not a woman of color. That would be Kamala. Nevertheless, the world was watching as we finally got a chance to hear the vice president's plan for America. And that's where I want to start. First things first. I thought she started off slow. I was a bit worried at first. Okay? I really, really was. And I'm looking for something that I said to one of my boys last night because we were watching it and talking to one another while she was on stage. And, there were questions. Initially, for the first 5 to 10 minutes or so, I wanted her to come out swinging. I wanted her to come out inspiring us. I wanted her to come out exuding more confidence in her ability to be a strong, capable president. And I felt initially she had slow-rolled it a little bit to the point where she was pushing out her resume. And I thought that was caving to the cynics out there who were questioning her legitimacy. And she didn't need to do that. You're the vice president of the United States. Come out swinging. And then she got it going. And from that point forward, when she called the former president of the United States unserious, that's when I said, uh-oh, here we go. Look at this sound right here, unserious. Look at this.
Fellow Americans, this election is not only the most important of our lives, it is one of the most important in the life of our nation. In many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man. But the consequences of putting Donald Trump back in the White House are extremely serious. Consider not only the chaos and calamity when he was in office, but also the gravity of what has happened since he lost the last election.
See, that's where I'm going right there. I love the fact that she brought that up, because that's why he's not getting my vote. See, no matter what, I believe in America, things are cyclical. What goes around comes around. And it might be your turn this time, it might be your turn next time. But the reality of the situation is, this is the United States of America. We've had Nixon, we've had Ford, we had Carter. We had Reagan for a couple of terms and George H.W. Bush. Then we had Clinton for a couple of terms. After that, we had George W. Bush for a couple of terms, even though one could easily argue it should have been Al Gore if it wasn't for the hanging chads in the state of Florida. But I digress. Okay? He won in 2000, came back in 2004, beat John Kerry. After that, what did we have? We had Obama. who beat Hillary and all the other Democrats that tried to get in their way. And not only did he beat John McCain in the general election, and then after that he beat Mitt Romney, even though Mitt Romney slaughtered Barack Obama in the first debate on the economy. Last two debates, Barack Obama showed up and handled his business. But that first debate against Mitt Romney, damn it, I almost called for a mercy rule. I almost waved a towel. It was that bad. But we had Barack Obama there. And then after that, it was supposed to be Hillary, but it ended up being Trump. And then after Trump, it was Biden. And now here we are. It's not a dead end. At least it hasn't been in the past. But when you call somebody unserious, and he's proven himself to be unserious in terms of his verbiage and his willingness and ability to articulate policy and some of the decisions that go behind it, and we're not worried about a personal agenda contaminating the proceedings because of relationships with dictators across the globe or whatever the case may be. And you talk about a man being unserious, but the consequences of him returning to office is serious. I thought that was a point that needed to be made. I thought it should have been made sooner rather than her giving off her bio and her resume. But damn it, I'll take it, because for the last 29 minutes or so to 30 minutes of that speech, Kamala Harris was fantastic. She showed up. What I was imploring on Wednesday's show that was grossly misrepresented in the conservative stratosphere was that she needed to show up and show people what we believe she's capable of. I'm not going to look at this black woman and you're going to tell me that a former prosecutor, who is a former state attorney general, who is a former senator, who is the present vice president of the United States, you're going to come to me with her lack of qualifications while applauding Trump's qualifications going into office? Are you smoking crack? That ain't happening. If I didn't question him, I damn sure ain't questioning her. At some point in time, no matter what your mind is, no matter what your psyche is, no matter what you do cerebrally and what have you, and people on the conservative side can lean to how he governed, and I can respect that in their minds, I also got to pay attention to your ability to articulate your positions and the discipline that you exercise and put forth so you ain't scaring the living hell out of American citizens. I remember when Trump talked about former cabinet member John Bolton. And he said to him, I liked having him in the room with me because, you had folks from other nations, the minute they saw him, they were petrified. We were going to bomb them because all he wanted to do was bomb everybody. And they were scared we were going to do it. So sometimes I'd keep him in the room with me and just tell him to be quiet. And I would sit there and do the talking because him just sitting next to me would scare the living hell out of them. That's fine. The problem is the former president of the United States tends to do that with the American people. And there's too much stuff that's going on in this world for you not to be sensitive to the thoughts you put in the heads of the American citizen, of the constituent or constituency while stuff is going on. She didn't stop there, though, because she zeroed in on Trump, which was what she needed to do. That is the opposition. And I wish that Trump had zeroed in on her the way that she zeroed in on him so we can have a debate about the issues instead of looking at him saying to people, you didn't even say hello, how are you, or questioning her ethnicity or her intellect. That ain't working. You can't have a United States Constitution that rules that we are 3/5 of a human being, but then turn around and say that a speck of blackness in her doesn't qualify her to be black. Is she black or is she Indian? You don't have it both ways. Which one is it? You about the Constitution, right? Well, what the hell did the Constitution say? We never subscribed to that as black people. I'll be damned if we did. But there were white people in America who did. Now suddenly you want to use that against them. It ain't going to work. But in the end, she locked in on Trump. From about the 9 or the 10-minute mark, she locked in. Kamala Harris showed up. And by the way, major props to Kerry Washington for emceeing the night with her. And as she had those two beautiful nieces of Kamala Harris come up on that stage, I think they were her nieces. And she said, for those that don't know how to pronounce her name, how do you pronounce her name? And one of the nieces says, comma, as in comma. And then the other child said, Kamala. It was brilliant. Brilliant, okay? It was a beautiful thing. Props as an aside to the one and only D.L. Hughley going up on stage, being a man of his word, saying he judged her prematurely. He met up with her one day. She asked him to do his research. He went and did that, and he wanted to apologize on the national stage in front of the world to see, acknowledging that he needed to correct the errors of his way. That's what men do. Major props to D.L. Hughley for doing that. I know he's been critical of me. I don't give a damn. I still love the brother, and I still think he's great at a lot of things, and I wish him nothing but the best. We always going to be good. But back to the speech itself. Vice President didn't stop there. She got into dictators rooting for Trump. Listen to this.
I will never hesitate to take whatever action is necessary to defend our forces and our interests against Iran and Iran-backed terrorists. I will not cozy up to tyrants and dictators like Kim Jong-un who are rooting for Trump. Because, you know, they know he is easy to manipulate with flattery and favors. They know Trump won't hold autocrats accountable because he wants to be an autocrat himself. And as president, I will never waver in defense of America's security and ideals, because in the enduring struggle between democracy and tyranny, I know where I stand and I know where the United States belongs.
Here you go. Ladies and gentlemen, that's leadership. Say what you want. And it's just a speech. It's not policy. It's not that. I get that part. But you're going to give a speech. Give it right. And make sure everybody knows where you stand. Make sure everybody knows what you stand for. She said, this is what it is. She said, dictators are rooting for Trump. And basically said, because he wants to be like them. I mean, damn. So what that's going to do is make you dial it back a little bit. And say, okay, let me think about some of the things that he's done. Let me think about some of the things he wants to do. Let me think about Project 2025. Let me think about dismantling the federal government. Let me think about making it harder with women and their reproductive rights. Let me think about law enforcement and what kind of effect and impact he wants to have on that. Let me think about the possibility of him being able to operate with impunity in light of the Supreme Court justice's rulings just weeks ago that essentially said, if you're in office, there's a lot of crimes that you can't be associated with. I mean, you get to operate with some degree of impunity sitting in that office, making some of those decisions. I mean, these are the kind of things that she was talking about, which brings you to the point of elevating the level of importance in your mind as to whether or not you want somebody about country. Do you want somebody about country? Or do you want somebody just about their party and themselves? Here's what she had to say about that.
Our nation with this election has a precious, fleeting opportunity to move past the bitterness, cynicism, and divisive battles of the past, a chance to chart a new way forward. Not as members of any one party or faction, but as Americans. And let me say, I know there are people of various political views watching tonight, and I want you to know, I promise to be a president for all Americans. You can always trust me. to put country above party and self.
Go ahead, girl. Go ahead. That's what I'm talking about right there. You see, that's why I'm a registered independent. I don't like either damn party. I think they all full of it. I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about the party, the two-party, the binary system that engulfs us and our lives. I don't trust them. You know what would make me trust them? If I had a leader up top that was speaking about what's in the best interest of this nation, and I had parties on both sides who didn't march lockstep along party lines. If I saw Republicans vote with Democrats, if I saw Democrats voting with Republicans, if I saw bipartisanship bipartisanship working effectively, instead of marching a lockstep among party lines, ruling our political system, if I saw it, I could trust it more. But I can't. You realize in today's generation, you don't even have, once you campaign, the work is in the campaign. Once you're in office, if you're a senator or a congressional figure that exists today, you don't have to do any work once you're elected. All you have to do is vote along party lines. You don't even have to read bills. You don't have to do anything. Because all it's about in today's generation is making sure you're showing loyalty to the party. Showing loyalty to the party. Bump loyalty to the party. Loyalty is supposed to be to America. To the American citizens, white, black, Latino, Asian American, Native American, Jews, Catholics, Christians, it don't matter. You America. When Osama bin Laden and terrorists attacked this nation, you thought they distinguished when they ran those planes into the World Trade Center in 2001? Do you think for 1 second, 9/11, during 9/11, they crashed the planes in the building, and they said there's only Jewish folks in there. There's only black folks in there. There's only white folks in there. No, they didn't. They didn't give a damn. They lumped us all together. And all of you got to go. As many of y'all as we could take out. That's what they did. We didn't compartmentalize as Americans. We said it's us against them. That's what we heard from Kamala Harris last night. I'm proud of that woman today. I'm proud of her. I'm going to take a break for just a second, but I got a little more to say. You're watching the Stephen A. Smith Show right here over the digital airways of YouTube, and, of course, listening to me on iHeartRadio. Back with even more in a minute. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show right here over the digital airwaves of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. Before I get back into Kamala Harris, let me just notify y'all that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., there was speculation that he was going to drop out of the race today as an independent that was scheduled to run against both Kamala Harris as well as Donald Trump. Well, as usual, he did something that was relatively convoluted, very confusing, didn't seem to be too definitive. Instead of dropping out completely, he basically said, don't vote for me if you're in the swing states. But if you're in a red or blue state, feel free to vote for me or whatever. Like that's going to accomplish anything. I don't understand it. Plus, he was supposed to be perceived as somebody, or he was being seen as somebody who's going to throw his support behind Donald Trump. Nevertheless, all of the living Kennedys have spoken, courtesy of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s sister, who came out with this tweet. Miss Kerry Kennedy, she says, I'm sharing a personal statement that my family and I have made in response to my brother's announcement. We want an America filled with hope and bound together by a shared vision of a brighter future, a future defined by individual freedom, economic promise, and national pride. We believe in Harris and Walz. Our brother Bobby's decision to endorse Trump today is a betrayal of the values that our father and family hold most dear. It is a sad ending to a sad story. End quote. All I'm going to say is that RFK Jr. is a bit confusing. I'm not going to lie to you. I've never thought about him once. I don't care how smart he was. I could not, I call it prejudice, call it whatever you want. I could not listen to that voice all the time. I just can't. It's a hard listen. It's a hard listen. okay? Conspiracy theories aside and all of this stuff about COVID and other things, I just couldn't. The voice alone drove me crazy. But that's just me, my personal opinion. That's just me. Let me get back to Kamala before I transition to some sports with the one and only Paul Feinbaum, along with a couple of your tweets and stuff before I get on out of here for the day. I was really pleased with the vice president and her speech last night. I was very, very pleased. And obviously, if you are an American citizen and you've got concerns about what's transpiring, she gave the kind of speech that you wanted to hear. I knew that she wasn't going to go the way that Donald Trump did at the Republican National Convention, basically ruining 3.5 nights of exceptional work on a part of the Republican National Convention. He ruined it. Everybody was fine but Donald Trump that night. Everybody was fine but him. And his speech was so awful that I just thought that he basically messed up his prospects. Kamala Harris did not do that last night. And here was one of the reasons why, when she was talking about how America, we are not going back. Listen to this.
But America, we are not going back. We are not going back. We are not going back. We are not going back to when Donald Trump tried to cut Social Security and Medicare. We are not going back to when he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, when insurance companies could deny people with pre-existing conditions. We are not going to let him eliminate the Department of Education that funds our public schools. We are not going to let him end programs like Head Start that provide preschool and child care for our children. America, we are not going back.
Assuming there's complete truth and validity and veracity to her statements, that would be enough. But she wasn't finished. She wasn't finished. That would be enough to assume folks are out of their minds. She gave you even more reasons why to think some of these folks are out of their minds. Listen to this.
This is what's happening in our country because of Donald Trump. And understand, he is not done. As a part of his agenda, he and his allies would limit access to birth control, ban medication abortion, and enact a nationwide abortion ban with or without Congress. And get this, he plans to create a national anti-abortion coordinator and force states to report on women's miscarriages and abortions. Simply put, they are out of their minds.
Here's where it gets interesting. When she made that statement, all I could think about was women are going to determine this election. It's not going to be the fellas. No matter your ethnicity, no matter what your background is pertaining to affluence, rich, poor, whatever the case may be, black, white, whatever. Men are not going to determine this election. It's going to be women. Because reproductive rights, particularly the way Kamala Harris outlined it, it's going to come down to that. White women, as well as black women. Now, the belief is most black women ain't going to vote for Donald Trump because most black people ain't going to vote for Donald Trump. But white women are a very, very powerful constituent. Not just because of themselves in terms of the numbers gained, but because of the potential influence they could potentially have on their husbands. It's going to be real interesting to see. And I'm glad she said what she said, because highlighting that reality in terms of women's rights, one would surmise there's no way in hell he's going to win the female vote. But what if enough vote for him? Where's that going to leave us? It's going to be interesting to see what side of the aisle the ladies in this country are going to fall under. Either way you slice it, Kamala Harris did her job last night. And you know how important I believe closing is. As Alec Baldwin said in the movie Glengarry Glen Ross, always be closing. Always be closing. You got to close the deal. And that's what she did, talking about her days from the courthouse, aiming for the White House. Listen to this.
I will be a president who unites us around our highest aspirations. A president who leads and listens, who is realistic, practical, and has common sense, and always fights for the American people. From the courthouse to the White House, that has been my life's work.
Now she's got to be ready for them to attack her life's work. But it all started with you coming out swinging. That's what I was calling for. I wanted her to come out swinging. I wanted her to make sure that she made a profound speech and sent a profound message. I don't give a damn that Beyonce didn't perform at the DNC last night like TMZ initially reported, but ultimately made a correction. They said they got it wrong. Ain't nobody castigating them in any way. I'm just stating the facts. But I don't care about none of that. I cared about what she had to say. She started off slow with her bio on her resume. But from that point forward, at about the 10 or 11 minute mark, the Vice President of the United States, the Democratic nominee for the President of the United States, Kamala Harris, showed up and she showed out. Now, let the games begin. May the best one win. Got to show up for the fight. She showed up. That is what I have been waiting for. Up next, transitioning to the world of sports, the one and only Paul Feinbaum comes on to jumpstart the college football season for us, because he got a lot to say about a lot of stuff going on, and I can't wait to hear him. I can't wait. We'll be talking to the one and only Paul Feinbaum in just a minute. I'll get to your tweets as well before I close out the show. You are watching the Stephen A. Smith Show right here over the digital airwaves of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. Back to kick off the college football weekend and its new playoff format in a minute. Welcome back to Stephen A. Smith Show right here over the digital airwaves of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. It's time to get to the 2024 college football season that kicks off this weekend with a few changes. A number of college football powerhouses have changed conferences this year, resulting in the Power 5 conferences becoming the Power 4 conferences. In addition to that, the playoffs have been expanded from 4 schools to 12 schools, with the postseason lasting one full month. Who better to talk to than my next guest here? He is the mouth of the South, the reigning champion as far as I'm concerned when it comes to analysis of college football. The one and only Paul Feinbaum is in the house. My pleasure, buddy. What's going on, man? How you doing? How you doing?
I am doing great. It's such a thrill to be on with you, Stephen A. Thank you so much.
Man, please, the honor is all mine. Although you and I have gotten into it a little bit over the last few weeks with the blasphemy coming out of your mouth. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I almost had a heart attack. I almost faded. I said I'm in great health. I'm feeling great. I'm in the best shape I've been in nearly 30 years. And then Paul Feinbaum almost sent me to my grave, because in a world where we're looking at the top 12 schools, you talk about 12 schools, not a 14 playoff, a 12-team playoff, you actually indicated it's a possibility that Alabama wouldn't even qualify. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe you said it. I'm going to give you an opportunity to correct the error of your ways, Paul Feinbaum, and tell the world that something was wrong with you that day, that you did not mean what you said.
The only thing wrong that day, Stephen A. Smith, was your hearing, because I said there was a possibility. I didn't declare Alabama dead. In fact, I think they will make the playoff right on the cut line. But your reaction, I don't know what your health is, and I'm not asking for your private physician to show me your latest physical, but I think it's time for you to go back and see the funny guy with the hat, because I have rarely, if ever, seen you melt down like that over something as trivial as Alabama possibly missing the playoffs. Stephen A., your buddy Nick Saban is working at ESPN now. He's no longer the coach. And if you don't understand what that means, then you need to come down here to the South and I'll give you a tutorial.
Well, what about Kalen DeBoer? Everybody's been raving about the man. The man is 25-13 over the last 25-3. I'm sorry, over the last 2 years. He was in the national championship game last year. Okay, he's won 90% of his games as a head coach. All right, no matter where he's been, including 3 national titles on the Division II level before he arrived in Washington. He's a 2-time Pac-12 Coach of the Year. This dude is no slouch now, Paul Feinbaum. I mean, he's got a pretty damn good resume.
Well, he does. He wouldn't have gotten the job without all that, but that doesn't mean anything. Stephen, I've covered Alabama a long time, as you know. Do you realize, and I hate to give you trivia questions here, but every coach at Alabama since Bear Bryant retired, he retired in 1982. Do you realize every coach at Alabama in his first year has lost 4 games or more? What I'm saying is that is a difficult transition. It's not like taking over in certain places. There's so much pressure. And this is a guy that has a schedule. I'm not saying he's going to lose 4 games, but he could lose 3, and 3 would knock him out of the playoffs. And it's not that far-fetched, and I'll tell you why. He has a road game against Michigan the 3rd week of the season. I think they'll win that game, but it's tricky. And then he's got Georgia at home. I don't care about the record last year or the year before against Georgia. Georgia has a better team than Alabama. He goes on the road to Knoxville, Tennessee, LSU and Baton Rouge, and Norman, Oklahoma. It's not far-fetched to think he could lose a couple of games. He's also got Missouri at home. Stephen A., this is not a lock. This is not saying Nick Saban's going to be in the playoffs like he was almost every year of his tenure at Alabama. This is a completely different situation.
I love how you bring up the fact that Nick Saban is no longer there. And obviously those are huge shoes to fill, and as a result, that can be an impediment to the success of Alabama. But you just shove aside, when you talk about Michigan, you say you think they'll win that game. Jim Harbaugh is no longer this. Ron Moore, I mean, we assume he can coach and what have you, but we don't know what he could do. When we talk about the reigning, defending national champion Michigan Wolverines, what are your expectations for them for this upcoming season, in light of the fact that Harbaugh is no longer there?
Hey, let me correct myself. I think Alabama's playing at Wisconsin, not Michigan. So I'm glad you brought Michigan up. I think Michigan is a really good team. Sherrone Moore did a good job last year. I mean, I wasn't crazy about some of the things he said, all the kumbaya about Jim Harbaugh, but he got the job
and the
done.
crying. And the crying, Paul. Let's not forget the crying. I didn't understand all that crying after they won the game. It really annoyed me. But go ahead.
No, it did. I mean, we are in 100% agreement. It was too much, but he won the big games. He survived. Listen, I think Stephen A. Smith could have coached that team to the playoffs last year. It wasn't that difficult considering the talent that Jim Harbaugh had assembled. But their schedule is going to do them in. They have Texas the second week of the season, and they could lose. If they lose the Texas game, I think they're going to be essentially out of the playoffs because they're not going to beat Ohio State for the 4th year in a row. They've got I think they've got a bunch of other schools like Oregon's on that schedule, Washington, SC. It is a tremendous challenge, and it's not they'll take a slight step back. They won't make the playoffs.
When you're looking at the top team in the nation, I'm just looking at Ohio State now. They got this kid, Jeremiah Smith, that everybody's been raving about, having the potential. He's the best recruit in the nation at the position. Obviously, you see about some of the superstar transfers they have available to them. Chip Kelly's their new offensive coordinator. A lot of people are talking about Ohio State and the kind of noise that they're making, but I know I'm talking to the mouth of the South and one of the elite football analysts in America, college or pros. So I know how you feel about Georgia. Where is your mindset right now? Because even though they call you the mouth of the South, the fact is you're known for your objectivity. You're going to call it like you see it. Are you viewing Ohio State as the top team in the nation, or are you viewing Georgia in that regard?
I'm giving Georgia a slight edge, Stephen A. I think in many ways Ohio State has more talent. I mean, they went on a buying spree last winter, which is now legal in college football, and ended up with just an enormous class. The difference between Georgia and Ohio State is the quarterback position. Will Howard is a transfer over from Kansas State. He is serviceable. He is not elite. Carson Beck is very likely the number one QB that's going to be taken in the draft. And I think that's essential. But I think they'll meet for the national championship. The path of the national championship will be fascinating, though. And what we see today in August is not exactly what we're going to see at the end of the playoffs. The playoff does not end until January 20th. Last year, the season ended on January 8th. Why am I bringing this up? We have a playoff for the first time that goes on beyond more than 2 games. You could conceivably play 4 or 5 games if you don't get the top 4 seeds. And there's going to be attrition. So how much depth do you have? I think right now Ohio State probably has more depth than Georgia, but I'll still give Georgia the slight edge because of the quarterback position. But not much.
I got you. Let's get into a conversation real quick, Paul, about the transfer portal. Who do you think won in that regard? How have you felt about the transfer portal? How has it affected college football? And who do you think won this offseason?
Ohio State won. They got the quarterback I mentioned a minute ago. Not only that, they got Judkins from Ole Miss. He was the best running back in the SEC 2 years ago. He had some issues with Lane Kiffin about playing time, so he found the place that he wanted to go. He got Caleb Downs from Alabama. Stephen, you've been at it. You know how good Caleb Downs was, arguably the best freshman in the country last year. He's a DB for Nick Saban. He almost went to Georgia, Ohio State, figured out a way to get him there. That is valuable. As important as he is for Ohio State in the defensive backfield, he's hurting Alabama by not being there because he could control a game. That's just a couple of players. They got Alabama's center. They got Julian Sayin, who's not a well-known player. He was Alabama's top recruit this incoming season. He was a 5-star from Southern California that Nick Saban worked hard to recruit. He shows up on campus for a couple of weeks, and he's gone the day after Saban leaves. So, I mean, they had a monstrous take. Outside of Ohio State, probably Ole Miss had the best class in the portal, and that's why Lane Kiffin's program in Oxford is one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the country this year.
Kind of surprised. You mentioned about 3 guys that departed from Alabama the second Saban left, and obviously Kalen DeBoer comes on board. What are we to make of that, if anything at all? Because, again, I know you're not Saban, but in the same breath, you've had your level of success as well. And for players, the quality of Downs and others that were willing to depart to go to play for Ryan Day, who's had success but's lost the last 3 years to Michigan, hasn't won a national title, one would think you would have given Kalen DeBoer an opportunity. What do you make of that, the fact that they did it?
Well, Stephen, what happened was Saban announces on a Wednesday that he's leaving. I mean, there is shock. DeBoer comes in on Friday, and it took him a couple of days to gather up and to go at full speed. And in the process, the Sharks are out there. You know that. You know the way college football is right now. There's Kirby Smart. There's Ryan Day. There's other coaches. And just a couple of things got lost in the translation. Caleb Downs, everybody thought was going to play for Kirby Smart. But Sayin's the most interesting one. There's a book out next week that says that Kalen DeBoer had a meeting with Sayin, and he asked Julian Sayin how to spell his name, and the kid said, "I'm out of here." I mean, these are minor things, but Nick Saban would have never made a mistake like that. And I'm not suggesting that DeBoer isn't an elite coach. I think he is, but coaching at Alabama is not like coaching at Washington or at some NAIA school. It's a different world, and the Sharks that are out there coming in and literally stealing players off your roster right now make the old days of college basketball recruiting really look tame. I mean, it is vicious, and it's also the money is unbelievable.
That's the reason why Nick Saban retired. I mean, Nick Saban and I, when we sat in his office, we spoke privately about this. He considered it embezzlement, for crying out loud. He said that the game has deteriorated, not the game on the field, but in terms of recruiting, getting talent to your program, et cetera, he was just really, really down on the climate and how it had changed and indicated that it had played a pivotal role in his willingness to step away from the game of football. Do you see it getting any better or worse in the world of college football?
No, and I'm glad you told that story. That's a very little known story about that conversation you had with him, because he did not share information like that with very many people, and I know how much he trusted you. And I mentioned this once on First Take, but when you came down and spoke at to his team a couple of years ago, I'm told by people inside that building, and let me tell you, they had Chris Paul this year. They've had Mike Tyson. They've had Pete Rose. They've had Kobe, Stephen A. Smith. is considered the best speaker ever to a Nick Saban team in Tuscaloosa. So he trusted you. He told you things that he didn't tell a lot of the rest of us, Stephen A., but he couldn't handle it anymore. And he didn't need to handle it anymore. He was 72 years old. He had won 7 national championships. He had retired the trophy, so to speak, and he could not deal with it because there were players on the plane ride to Pasadena, Stephen A., for the national semifinal who were hitting up assistant coaches about, hey, what am I going to get? It was the season could be, if it's over next week or the week after, I'm thinking about going somewhere else. I mean, that's where these guys are right now. I don't blame them for wanting their money, but if you're 72 and you've done it all, you don't want to deal with it.
What do you make of the teams that changed conferences? We've got teams in the Big 12 now that were in the Pac-12, and obviously teams in the Big 10 now that wasn't in the Big 10 before. Speak to that and the kind of effect you think that's going to have on a game of college football.
Well, there's a couple of really important ones to keep your eye on. Texas left the Big 12 for the SEC. Texas was in the playoffs last year. Another one that really matters is Oregon. Oregon is the top 3 team in the country this year under Dan Lanning. May have one of the top quarterbacks as well, and Dylan Gabriel. So that's going to really shake up the Big Ten. If you had to say what's the biggest game of the year in college football this year, it is going to be Ohio State at Oregon. And some people watching are going, I didn't really even realize Oregon was in the Big Ten. The one that's not making much of an impact is Southern Cal under Lincoln Riley. They're now in the Big Ten as well. They announced 2 years ago as opposed to a year later with Oregon and Washington. And that's a program that's really in a lot of trouble in the year after Caleb Downs. So those are the ones to keep your eye on. Colorado is now in the Big 12 from the Pac-12. So, I mean, there's mass chaos. And think about this, Stephen A. In the ACC this season, they will be playing with SMU, which was in the American last year, and Stanford and California. Stanford and California are now playing in the same league with Syracuse, Florida State, North Carolina, and Miami.
One of the reasons I brought you on this show is because I want you to preview tomorrow's game between Florida State and Georgia Tech. I wanted to get in that, but before I did any of that, I've got to ask you, because you brought up 3 programs with very prominent names at the head coaching position. Let's start first with USC and Lincoln Riley. You have been unapologetic and very, very candid about your feelings about him, and you said he should be on the hot seat, and if he doesn't produce this year, he needs to be gone. Speak to why you've been so down on Lincoln Riley and what kind of hope or enthusiasm you could put, or anybody could potentially have towards him for this upcoming season, because I get the sense that you don't have much for him.
I don't. And listen, you have Caleb Williams as your quarterback, and you throw away a season because you don't spend enough time on the defensive side of the ball. That's not something new for Lincoln Riley. We all know who his quarterbacks were at Oklahoma. I mean, he had Kyler Murray, he had Baker Mayfield and Jalen Hurts, and he couldn't. And he normally, I think one year they went to overtime with Georgia, but the other 2 years in the playoffs, they were literally blown out of the entire stadium. He went out and got another coordinator from UCLA. Things are supposed to be better, but I don't believe it. Lincoln Riley, to me, is not a top-flight coach. I think he has missed his moment. You go back 2 years ago, there was so much enthusiasm in that program. He owned L.A. for a very brief time, and Caleb won the Heisman, and they had a great season his first year, but they couldn't sustain it, and I think it will be much more difficult now.
Primetime Deion Sanders, University of Colorado. Started off strong, 3-0, and then after that they nosedived and obviously won one of their last 8 games or what have you. And we know, including 6 straight, and we know that he's been in the news on a lot of occasions over the last few months. The sizzle is always with Primetime. You know, I think that he has the potential to be a great coach. I know he's the greatest cornerback that ever lived, and I think that he's an elite motivator. My wish for him is that he had gotten a Florida State job when he wanted it before Colorado ever came along, or he had gotten a job at Texas A&M. That would have been my wish for him in competing in the SEC. I think being in Boulder, Colorado, I don't like his chances, Paul Feinbaum. But your thoughts about Primetime Deion Sanders and what that program is going to do?
Well, they owned the college football season last year for about 5 weeks, and some of it was predicated on on upsetting TCU and then beating Nebraska. Having people like you, Shannon, The Rock, others show up, and it just infused so much energy that everybody wanted to watch them. And then when they went off the cliff, people turned away. And I don't think they're turning back this season, Stephen A. And I think that's going to frustrate Coach Prime. I have great respect for him. He's recruited a lot of amazing players. I mean, Travis Hunter might be the best player in the country, but it's not enough. And the league is easier this year being in the Big 12, but he's still, to be relevant, has to be a playoff contender, and I don't think they are. In the moment that they lose enough games where they're no longer part of the conversation, I think we will all move on to those who matter most, and I think that will drive him crazy. I agree with you. You put him in any number of places, and he can recruit the talent. You can only recruit a limited amount of talent to Boulder. So I hope he's patient, but ultimately I think that's a dead-end job for him.
Do you believe that he'll ultimately get a job at a big-time program, or do you believe that times are going to be so rough that it could ruin his future prospects of getting a job at a big-time program?
I think ADs know what he's capable of. Now, some will not hire him. You know that, and I know that. But there are athletic directors out there at good schools who need a change agent who I think will take the chance. By the way, not a chance. Make a very smart move. I think there are a lot of places that he could completely turn it upside down where he would have a legitimate chance. By the way, Auburn's another school that could have had him 2 years ago, and they ended up hiring Hugh Freeze, who was run out of the business 8 or 9 years ago at Ole Miss. But somebody will take a chance on him, and I think they'll be rewarded. I give Colorado credit for trying. He's changed that. He's made that place at least a conversation piece, but ultimately it's still Colorado, and they are never, even with Deion Sanders, going to be a significant player in college football.
You know, the next person I'm going to bring up, I'm incredibly fond of. I haven't spoken to him in over a year, but I've always been very, very fond of Dabo Swinney. Goes to the national championship for the, national college football players 4 or 5 years. Won 2 national championships. Give him a lot of credit where credit is due, no question about it. Over the last several years, the worst season he had was last season, where he went 9-4. But I do find myself, I can't wait to see him. I got a lot of love for him, but he's old school, and he's somebody that seems very averse to the changing times. Doesn't want to adjust and adapt, but so much. And I think that actually may get in the way of any future success he's hoping to have at Clemson. Your thoughts about the one and only Dabo Swinney? There was a time when we talked about Saban. We were talking about him. When we talked about Kirby Smart. When we talked about, obviously, Urban Meyer at the time when he was in college football. We still found ourselves talking about Dabo Swinney. That isn't the case at this particular moment in time. Your thoughts about the Clemson head coach?
It's remarkable what he did. He played for 4 national championships. He beat Nick Saban twice. He was in the playoffs a couple more times. But I think his term has ended, and he's done it to himself. And on one hand, Stephen A., you have to admire him. He stuck to his principles. He's very old school for a guy that's not that old. But it's hard to be old school in an age when players have their hands out and they have no loyalty. And I think he's been burned on that. And he's in a league now where Florida State is probably a little bit better. I think Miami could be better this year, and I think it makes it more complicated for him to return to prominence. It's not impossible to get in the playoffs now. He can do that. It's a little bit easier being in a 12 team than it was a 4 team. But I think the days when we talk about him on a regular basis on shows like yours every morning are over.
Paul Farbaugh, last question. Florida State's opening the season. They're kicking off the college football season against Georgia Tech Saturday afternoon. First things first, your thoughts about Florida State and what happened to them last year when they weren't picked to be in the college football playoff, one of the 4 teams. Did you agree with that decision? Do you believe they got screwed over? What were your thoughts about that?
I completely agreed with the decision to leave them out. And by the way, I'm sorry. They lost a quarterback, Jordan Travis. That's part of football. Had he not been hurt, they probably would have gotten in. But I frankly thought the team that they got screwed last year wasn't Florida State. It was Georgia. They were better than Florida State. And I'm not trying to use the 63-3 score in the Orange Bowl as a comparison because so many players had already opted out of Florida State. But Alabama was fortunate to get in. But the reason why Alabama got in is on the biggest stage of the year in college football, they beat the number one team, and that's the last thing that committee saw. As far as Saturday, I think they'll handle Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's is a good program. They're ascending. They beat Miami last year. They beat some other schools. But this to me looks like about a 2-touchdown game. I think Florida State is not what they were last year, but they're still pretty good. In fact, I like Miami to win the ACC this year.
Wow. Okay. Very, very last question. Biggest story in college football this season is what?
It's the playoffs because Stephen A., even though we talk about Alabama and post-Saban, that will fade away pretty quickly. But why it's so important is you can now lose an early season game. Michigan can lose to Texas. Alabama can drop the Georgia game at the end of September. Ohio State can go to Oregon in October, and it's not over. Right? I mean, the calculus is that 10-2 is probably going to get you in the playoffs. So instead of maybe 5 or 6 schools trying for those 4 spots, you may have 20 schools. And even more important than that, at the end of the season, when things usually start to get pretty stale in college football, and it's all about those 3 or 4 schools, now we have conversations just like you do in the NFL. Are you in the playoffs? Do you have a first-round bye? Do you have home field? College football is now the NFL, and Stephen A., the NFL sells well in this country.
One of the best college football analysts, one of the best football analysts in America, the one and only Paul Feinbaum, blessing me with his presence. Thanks a lot, buddy. I'll see you soon, man. Thank you so much.
The pleasure was mine. Thank you, Stephen A.
Coming up next, I'll pick my WNBA Player of the Week. Plus, there's a recent poll going around about who is the most annoying person in football media. I'll get into that next, right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show over the digital airways of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. Back with more in a minute. Welcome back to Stephen A. Smith Show right here over the digital airways of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. Let me transition to some WNBA news before we get on out of here today. Not to mention some other stuff that I want to get into before I jumpstart your weekend. The WNBA League play restarted after the Olympic break. At 2-0, the Indiana Fever are not the only WNBA team that has an undefeated record. The Atlanta Dream are also undefeated with a 3-0 record. They've been led by my WNBA Player of the Week, the one and only Tina Charles. In her team's 72-63 win over the Phoenix Mercury, Tina Charles surpassed Hall of Famer Tina Thompson to move into second place on the WNBA's all-time scoring list behind the Mercury's Diana Taurasi. The game marked Tina's 11th double-double of the season with 12 points and a season high of 17 rebounds. She's also the second leading rebounder in WNBA history. So this is a future Hall of Famer. She hasn't won on the WNBA level, but she won a national championship, a couple of national championships at UConn, if I remember correctly. She's big time. And so give her props where it's due. I'm just accustomed. When I thought about the WNBA player, I see who can I pick other than Asia Wilson? Because I'd give it to Asia Wilson every week because she's just phenomenal, okay? And Caitlin Clark is coming on strong and she's doing her thing, and we can't ignore that, okay? But Tina Charles, major props to you. Congratulations. Keep up the great work. You deserve our love and respect. Congratulations. Moving on, the calendar says August, not March. But guess who has found himself in the middle of a damn bracket battle? Moi. Ahead of football season kicking off, sports blog The Spun has released its bracket of the 64 most annoying people in football media. And I'm one of the number 1 seeds alongside Skip Bayless, Colin Cowherd, and Nick Wright. I defeated Greg Olson in round 1, and now I face off against my buddy, the one and only Carissa Thompson, in round 2. Most annoying people in football media. That's what this is about. I don't know how the hell I ended up on that list, but let me say this for a couple of things. The Spun, your list is trash. Your list is trash. Your bracket is trash. It's trash, okay? I'm going to tell you to your face. First of all, how the hell you have Carissa Thompson on the list? She's gorgeous. She's smart. She's good people. She's my friend. How you have her? Who does she annoy? Really? Come on now. Stop that. Ain't nobody looking at Carissa Thompson and the word annoyance comes to their mind. I'm sorry. I don't believe that for 1 second. All right? You want to throw Skip Bayless on there along with myself? All right. That's just haterade we throwing that. All right. Feel free. You know what I'm saying? I'm still here. I know y'all love me. You certainly talk about me enough. It's good for the ratings, ain't it? It's good for the clicks, ain't it? Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Yes, I know that's what it is. All right, but I ain't going to knock you for it. Number 2, how the hell could you have Colin Cowherd or Nick Wright on that list? First of all, let me say this about Colin Cowherd. Because my day job's at ESPN, obviously he's at Fox Sports. He used to be at ESPN. Please understand that Colin Cowherd is one of the greatest radio hosts you'll ever see. One of the best ever. I have no shame in saying that. Colin Cowherd is special. He's an elite storyteller, incredibly knowledgeable, very friendly. I don't believe has a vicious bone in his body, a vicious soul at all. He's incredibly talented, very credible, and his opinions and perspectives come from thoughtful places all the time. Colin Cowherd is a treasure and a tribute to this industry. And he is somebody I have profound respect for. And anybody that I know that knows anything about this business has profound respect for that man. How the hell is he on your most annoying list? How? That's just nonsense. And by the way, Nick Wright shouldn't be on there either. I don't give a damn that they go to quote-unquote competition. I respect both of them. They're my colleagues and contemporaries in this business, and they have earned far more respect than the Spun has, even though I'm rooting for you, because I ain't rooting against anybody. But how does Nick Wright end up on there? How? How is Greg Olsen on there to be beat? You just put people on there and just said, the hell with it. We just going to put every announcer, every commentator on there, and we'll just have a bracket with all of them. Is that what it is? Because Greg Olsen is an award winner. I don't find him annoying. He's the reason Tom Brady got to show up and show out, because Tom Brady's filling in some big shoes. Greg Olsen shouldn't be on that annoying list either. And damn sure not Nick Wright or Colin Cowherd, but especially not Colin Cowherd. You want to say I'm a bit annoying? I don't know where you would get that from. I mean, I'm a very lovable guy. I really, really am. I mean, I don't know if you notice it or not, but I am loved. I really am. I don't know how the word annoying would come to my mind. I don't bother people. But okay, keep me on there. Keep Skip on there. Colin Cowherd? You want to keep Nick Wright on there? Okay. You know, I love Nick. That's my man. But, you know, if other people at their taste, they want to find him annoying, that's fine. But Colin Cowherd? Really? I'm not buying that, bro. I'm not buying that. Now, before I get on out of here for the day, let me check out for the weekend, rather. Let's check out some of the tweets you've sent to me. So, you know, I might not respond if you get on my damn nerves. It depends on how annoying the damn tweet is. I'll make that decision. You know, no pun intended with the annoying. But let's get to it right here. I can't see who is that. The founder? What's the Twitter handle's name? Ponder that. Ponder that. Right? Who wins in a cage fight? The Rizzler or Big Justice? You know what? I like the Rizzler. The Rizzler looked like he was just born to hurt somebody. That's what he looked like. He looked like he was just born to hurt somebody. I know Big Justice with the weight stuff looks a little bigger, a little bit older. But the Rizzler looks like a little menace. Like he'll find a way. He looks like one of those dudes that's going to end up being a wrestler. And somebody cheats and knock you over the head with a chair while the referee ain't looking, and he'll fall on you and get you tapped out. That's what the Rizzler looks like. He looks like one of those dudes with that kind of potential. I got to assume he'll find a way to win. That's just me. Let me get to the next one right here, please. Let me see what the next tweet is. At Bet Boys Pod, right? Stephen A. Smith. Who is your most hated athlete of all time? Honest to God truth? No one. No one. There's never an athlete I hated. Now, there's a particular pundit that I despise. I think he's a seed of the devil. But I'm not going to bother saying his name again because he's useless to me. But I'll tell you this, an athlete, no. I've never hated an athlete. I've hated some things they've done. But I've never been one to believe that their worst act defines their character, no matter who they are. You know, I've gotten into my share of beefs over the years. There was a time Allen Iverson and I didn't talk for 8 months. I still love him like a brother. Then another time we didn't talk for 2 years. I still love him like a brother, and we're very tight now. I remember when I had a beef with Glenn Big Dog Robinson. And then I grew the hell up and recognized that I was wrong because I shouldn't have contributed to things the way that I did. Recently, you've seen the Steven Jacksons of the world or T.O.'s of the world. I love Steven Jackson. I disagree with what he said about me and how he tried to write me off or whatever, but I got nothing but love for him. Draymond was upset at me. I got so much love for Draymond, I can't put it into words. He's a good brother. Don't talk much to LeBron. Incredible role model. We all owe LeBron something. I respect and revere the hell out of that man for who he is and what he's accomplished. I just don't think he's the greatest ever. I think that's Michael Jordan. He's number 2. Even with Terrell Owens. Whatever disagreements or beef he's had, I'm not here to tell you that Terrell Owens is a bad person or I hate him or anything like that. We had a disagreement. I still wish him nothing but the best. All the happiness in the world. I ain't rooting against him. Athletes, they go through a lot. And if we're being honest, we put them through a lot. And a lot of things that they go through, most of us can't stomach. I think I can, but most folks can't. And the level of fairness and humanity we should throw in their direction, some people don't do that. I believe I do, but some people don't. And they deal with a lot of BS that they shouldn't have to deal with. And I take those things into consideration when I'm being judgmental about their character. And I do everything that I can to make sure that I compartmentalize and I isolate the difference between what they do and actually who they are. So to answer your question directly from your tweet, I don't hate any athlete. I think a vast majority, if not dare I say practically all of them, are not hateable. Could be annoying. Could be upsetting. Could be somebody that you don't want to mess with. You just don't want to be around because you live your life, I live mine, the whole bit. But with what they go through, it's hard to hate them, if you know. People who've endured far less, but end up being far more of a worse and more despicable human being have been outside the athletic stratosphere, to be honest with you. And I'll just leave it at that. That's it for this edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I know I did. I had to get a bunch of stuff off my chest about Kamala Harris and last night. And, of course, talking to Paul Feinbaum was a beautiful thing. And I meant what I said about being misrepresented with that caption and that headline I started off the show with. But that's neither here nor there. That's why I got a podcast and a show, because I get to correct the error of other people's ways at my damn discretion, which I will always do. Maybe not always, when I feel like it. How about that? Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your weekend. Peace and love. Appreciate your continued support of the Stephen A. Smith Show. Remember what I keep telling you. Keep it coming, and I'm going to keep on coming. Until next time, everybody, peace and love. I'm out.